Welcome to Spellstorm Miniatures, a podcast about miniature wargaming, including War Machine and Hordes by Privateer Press. We want to inspire you to play more.
Hey, welcome back to episode 21 of Spellstorm Miniatures. My name is Jeremiah.
I'm Dan. And this is Chad.
And we have a very exciting episode for you today. We're going to talk about choosing a paint scheme for our armies. And we have some pretty excellent painters. At least two of us are pretty good at it. And so we're excited to actually just talk about this topic in general. And some of us are actually starting new armies. And so this is a relevant topic. So we're excited to bring that to you today. But first, you guys play any games?
Yeah, I haven't done miniature games, but as far as card games, got some Lord of the Ring trading card game in.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was the, back in 2001 release, and then,
That was Decipher.
Yeah, Decipher, and I don't think anything's been released for several years. So...
But it's so much fun to go back and look at the old cards and look at your old deck that you made, and you're like, oh yeah, this was the best.
I haven't looked at this in 8 years, and how does this work again? Oh yeah.
Well, true story, I think it was one of the finest collectible card games out there.
Right.
And obviously I like the IP, but like the win structure, how it presented 3 opportunities to win, made it very dynamic and unique.
Yeah, definitely different from a lot of other CCGs
Yeah.
that are out there. Having multiple avenues of victory.
Yeah.
Like it's technically like that in Magic, but one of the win victories is milling your opponent's deck out, or like milling a deck out, which can be more difficult to do.
Yeah.
Like you specifically have to build your deck for it.
Yeah. Well, and that's how the loader worked, is, you could build your deck to target a certain win condition.
Yeah.
And so one win condition is getting to Site 9. So my goal was to make the fastest Rohan army I could make. And with mounts and certain event cards, it was pretty stellar. But the thing is you have to live. You have to get to Site 9 and live.
Yeah. Just a ring bearer. It's not a ring bearer has to live.
Not just a race.
Yeah. So anyway, what about you? You play any games lately?
I did actually play some non-War Machine games. I got to play a game of Monpok against Justin, one of the regulars at the store. He is actually brand new to miniatures games in general. He played Magic and I think some other games for years, but he'd never done any miniatures gaming. So he's brand new to Monpok. He's playing Destroyers. He played Thugrosh and Gorgadra, and I played Defender X and Sky Sentinel. And we got it down to... It was kind of a long, very cagey game for a little while. But eventually he did take out Defender X, and I took out Thugrosh. And he had Gorgadra, who I think was unhurt, and I had Sky Sentinel, who was unhurt. And I think maybe if I played really, really smart with the Strike Fighters, I probably could have won the game, but we ended up calling it because I was like, I gotta get going, and this is going to be such a long and drawn-out and cagey game that I think you're going to win, just because, like, as I'm constantly hurting Gorgadra, he's constantly getting power dice.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he gets into hyper form, if I start taking a turn to clear out his units, they also get riled when he goes into hyper form, so he gets power dice from that too. And I was like, I think I can maybe chip away at you and do some damage, but I think by the time you get to me, I think it's just downhill from there. And I was like, we don't have time to play this cagey game. I need to get going.
Yeah, super damage too when he's hyper, right?
Exactly, too. Yeah. So
Now, that was the Wednesday night, right?
Yeah,
I was
Wednesday last
I was right next to you.
Yeah.
And I played my very first Monpok game ever against Oz. So I asked Oz to be my teacher.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Phil was there, too.
Yeah.
And so Phil was able to offer some suggestions for strategy and things like that.
Yeah.
We just played a one-monster game. I can't remember the name of my monster.
You played Gorgadra.
I played Gorgadra.
Yeah,
And
you played the Destroyer starter box, and then
okay.
Oz played Hammerclack.
That's what it was, yeah. And I had a great time destroying buildings and whatnot, and Oz won.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember.
He's got a lot of games under his belt.
Yeah, I can't tell you how he won because I don't remember. But Oz won.
You were low health and he body slammed you into a building for 3 damage.
There it is.
I like how
I did look over and catch the tail end of that because Oz was like, I think I'm just going to beat you right now. Yeah, I'm just going to beat you right now. And I was like,
yeah.
All right, well.
And you know Oz, he likes to talk smack. So.
Yeah, he does. I also got to play a 3-way game of Song of Ice and Fire last Friday, too, against Remy and then his friend Judy, who plays Free Folk. And so that was my first experience playing against Free Folk. It was really interesting. Mance Raider is a jerk.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Judy immediately put Mance on the missive spot and put 2 condition tokens onto my Stark Umber Berserkers and was just constantly keeping them pinned down with either 2 or 3 different conditions. And so they were very, very ineffective. And then the final round of the game, or like one of the close to the end of the game, it was like the second to last round, I finally got to activate them before Mance was on them, and I had gotten to clear, I think, 1 or 2 of the condition tokens. So they were actually at full force.
Okay.
And I managed to get a round of attacks, and if her giant had failed, I made her giant vulnerable, and made her re-roll the 2 successes, but she re-rolled them into successes still. If she had failed those, I would have killed him. I would have killed the giant. But
nice.
I left him at 1 hit point. And then she just finished off the unit of Berserkers.
Oh, well, that's when he's most powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was it did the Free Folk player, who's playing it?
Judy.
Did Judy have a combined arms, or was it like it was a mix of giants and stuff, or was
She only had 1 giant.
One giant.
She had, I think there was a Followers of Bone.
Okay, I don't have those yet.
I think 2 or 3 units of just regular Free Folk Raiders.
Okay.
Oh, there's the Savage Cave Dwellers with Torment. Was one
yes.
of the
Oh, nice. Okay.
And then she had, I think, 2 units of either Spearwives. They may have been Spearwives because she only had, I think, 5 or 6 units.
Okay.
In a 40-point game.
Okay.
Plus 2
okay.
NPCs.
Okay.
But she was playing the lady. I don't know who the character is.
Val.
Oh, Val. Yeah. She was
yeah.
playing Val and then also Mance Raider.
Nice.
And
it
was a pretty nasty combo.
Yeah.
But I was playing Starks with Umber Berserkers, Eddard House Guard unit, the special House Guard unit, with Eddard attached, a regular unit of Stark Sworn Swords, a unit of Cav, and 2 NPCs. I actually was not running any Dire Wolves at all, which is, I think, uncommon for Starks.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So with the NPC track, there were 3 players.
Yeah.
How many total?
I think Remy was only playing with 1 NPC.
Okay, and she had 2.
Val and I both had 2. So
that's 5. So there's a 1 slot for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Because that could have been a challenge.
Yeah. I think that would have made it also really interesting of like gauging when we all had 2 and there's only 5 spots. One person's going to be the odd man out. And it's like, when do you take that position? When do you give up a unit activation to be able to claim something on the board you want to make sure that you get?
Right.
I think it would have made it interesting, but Remy just decided to play 1 NPC down.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It was a slog.
Yeah.
Because we were just playing, a straight destroy game because Judy and I have only played a handful of games.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting.
Nice. I got a couple other non-War Machine games in. The last couple weeks, I got to teach my friend Josh how to play Warhammer Underworlds, which I'm very excited about. He was interested anyway in playing the full game of Age of Sigmar, and the hobby side of him, he's still kind of learning. All new miniature players, you don't really understand what you're getting into until you really kind of get into it.
Yeah.
And so I stepped him back a minute, and I was like, okay, here's a way for you to get into the game and play the army that you want to play, but it's a little easier for you. And so he bought the Night Vault starter,
Yeah.
And we just sat right there in the store, and I put together his Thornbriars, and then he put together his Stormcast Eternals, and then we bust out the game right there and played.
Yeah.
And because they're push fit, you don't even need glue.
Yeah.
They go together so perfect.
Yeah, some of those easy to build ones are really nice. Like the Mythic Blight Hauler, I think I assembled and put it on a base in like 25 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
With zero glue.
Zero glue. And and plus he got to play with his miniatures, and it was a fun game too. It was pretty exciting. And so I think what he's going to do is he's going to buy a few more of those, because I actually have those kits for the Stormcast Eternals in the Age of Sigmar section of the store, and so I think it'll help him kind of flesh out his army a little bit more. And our goal is to play 750 together at some point soon when he's ready for that. So speaking of Age of Sigmar, I also got 2 games in with Oz. So we played. I think the first game he played Fire Slayers, and I was running Nurgle.
Yeah.
And then in the second game, he was running Nurgle, and I was running Slaves of Darkness. So I kind of surprised him because I have a unit of the mounted Chaos Warriors, the ones with javelins, and so they have a range attack and a 2-inch threat on their charge.
Okay.
And so I was able to flank pretty hard because they're also pretty fast. And so he didn't expect that one. But and I got my second Monpot game in.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we went down to Next Level Gaming on Saturday to participate in the War Machine tournament. And so in the first round, I got a bye, and Matt was running it, and he had brought his Monpot stuff, and so and some of the stuff I think he got from Richard. And so,
nice.
So I think Pterosaur? Is that his name?
Pterosaur, Terracon.
Terracon.
Yeah.
Richards, I was using that monster.
Yeah.
And so we played a single monster game. And we didn't finish because the round ended, but his monster was on 1 health, and mine had like 4. And so there's a good chance that I was going to pull that one out. So... he made a pretty risky move coming across the volcano early on to do some power attack, which I don't remember the name of the power attack, but it was pretty effective. Got rid of a bunch of my units.
Stomp.
Probably.
Was it like Rampage where he actually gets to move and...
Yeah.
Did he move? Yeah, anyway.
He moved, and he destroyed units. So whatever that was, he did.
Well, a Rampage is just like a trample in War Machine. So if it looked similar to that, that's what the power attack was. If it was like he moved up next to a bunch of them and made an attack, that's a stomp. It's basically like a thresher. It's basically like a 360 thresher.
That's what he did. He basically did the thresher one, the stomp attack, I guess. So that's the thing is I'm going to start learning some of the things. And there was like, is it the body slam where you pick them up and you put them adjacent?
Yes.
So if I was aware of that maneuver, I would have won the game outright for sure.
I thought,
but
it's
flush.
It's anywhere,
base to base,
aligned.
Yeah. So he was over here, kind of front, and if I would have body slammed him to my right side, it would have put him back into some fire, and that would have killed him right away.
2 damage.
Yeah. So I was in hyper mode doing super damage or something, and so like I had enough to. If I would have remembered that maneuver, I would have won outright, but I didn't.
Well, that's how Ozzy beat you. He body slammed you into a building.
Yeah, well, my memory is really good. So
it was crammed so full of simple games. So.
Yeah, it's true. And so anyway, so speaking of that tournament down in Salem, that means I also got in some War Machine games, and so that makes me really happy. So
I've been doing a bunch of lists since the new Theme Forces came out.
Nice.
And I've been throwing them at James, who has not been responding very much.
Oh.
he was just busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been doing a bunch of weird lists and things like that, doing different stuff, but I haven't gotten to play a game yet.
So I was running, I've been dojoing some things too. I'm not very good at that part of the game. I know some guys who can just spend hours on their phone and come up with like crazy combinations and stuff. My brain doesn't think like that necessarily. Yeah. And so I was running Makeda in the new Disciples of Agony and I realized that I need to alter the list. I played Connor in round 2 at Salem, and I realized that I need to alter the list. If I'm going to run Makeda 1, I need more dudes and less beasts. In order, so for that list, and so that was really good feedback. I had a great game against Connor. He was running Gareth 2, and I asked him I forgot to ask him actually if he was going to put our game up on his YouTube page. He was taking photos, and so Gareth has more mobility than I expected. And I had one assassination run against Gareth, and I left him on 3 boxes, and he was able to counterpunch pretty effectively, and then get out of dodge to avoid my counter punch in case his assassination failed. But his assassination was successful, and so he had to remove a significant amount of pieces to get to my caster, but he did it, and then he got me.
Yeah.
And so, I had shield guarded like 3 times. Like I used all my shield guards available that round, and he got me. So
yeah.
it was. I thought it was a pretty good game. I was kind of scared of his list a little bit because of how much his jacks can see.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of afraid about all that. But in scenario going into the final turn, neither one of us had scored on scenario, I don't think. And so it was definitely a fun game to play. So I got another War Machine game in with Oz. For the first time I put a 75 point Legion list on the table, and I ran Thagrash 1 and Primal Terrors against Gristle 2 and a bunch of Rune Shapers. Rune Shapers, yeah.
Stone dudes.
Yeah. So, and I did the thing that I always do, and when I play Warlock for the first time, I leave him up too far.
Yeah.
And somehow Oz was able to throw a few things at me and assassinate me, put me in the dirt. I was up 3-0 on scenario. I was feeling pretty good. I was like, oh, I got this.
Did you remember Thagrosh's -2 strength aura?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been helpful.
Yeah. Thagrosh 1 has in his command, enemy models get -2 strength.
That would have been very helpful.
Yeah, that's 2 less damage on every attack he hit you with if he was punching you.
Step 1, know your own cards.
Jeremiah, I know this is really hard. It's a little difficult now, too. When you're looking at the card in War Room, if you swipe to the left, if you're looking at it, you can read the abilities on the back of the card.
Oh, yeah.
It's the new turn your cards over.
Yeah, swipe right. Or left,
well, I mentioned before, I'm really good at this game. Oh, my goodness. Oh, so good. So
it's
good.
Okay. I gotta give you a little bit of a hard time.
It's fair. It's totally fair. Because it's
the first time that you
It's my
play.
MO, yeah.
Especially because we don't have a lot of Legion players around in the area, too, so it's probably something you haven't played against, so you weren't aware of it either.
That's true. I have not played against a lot of Legion, and certainly haven't played with, but I think I will be more. I know. There's some things. So, what about you guys? Get any War Machine games in?
Nope.
Yeah, you played Monpok instead.
instead.
Yeah. That's okay. It's still Privateer Press.
Privateer.
You still win. So, well, why don't we just get to our main topic, I guess? And today we want to talk about choosing a paint scheme, and we have a few notes that we've made. But does anybody want to start out with kind of a direction we want to go?
Mine, a lot of times, is a little freeform and kind of organic when I'm trying to figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll look for inspiration. I did this when I was painting my Monpok stuff. Is the guard models look like Gundams, so I wanted to do a Gundam color scheme. Defender X looks really similar to Wing Zero from the Gundam Wing series. And so it's a lot of white, blues, and reds. And so I took inspiration from that color scheme, and then also the color scheme of the very first Gundam from the first anime series, and kind of did a little spin on that. And then when I went to do when I went to do Sky Sentinel, I wanted to do another Gundam color scheme, but I didn't want to paint white. And so I was looking at some of their options, and again, Gundam Wing was one of the first, I think it was the first Gundam series I ever saw. But there's the Gundam Epion in there, which is a lot of like dark reds and grays and blacks and stuff like that. And so I looked at that, and then with his pose, he also kind of looks like Shining Gundam, which has like a burning hand attack basically, where it gets like super hot, and, like melts metal and stuff. And with his pose, he's like punching with one fist forward. So I painted his hand and tried to do a glowing effect to not great effect. But I did, a lot of reds and dark grays and things like that for his color scheme.
Nice. So one idea is look out at the world and see something you like. And,
art inspiration.
Art inspiration.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've taken that approach on some things too. Like my Montauk Martian Menace is pretty much I had an idea of something I wanted to paint, and then they actually kind of just fit it.
Yeah.
So even though I didn't know much about the game or those specific models, I was like, I'm going to buy those and I'm going to paint them in this scheme.
Yeah.
But other ones, like sometimes with like a lot of the War Machine ones, at least I know with my Signar and stuff, I usually try to stick a little more canon, to studio scheme for a couple reasons. One, it's easy to see, hey, that looks and goes together. It looks good. And then two, if you buy used or if you end up selling, it's sometimes easier on that direction as well. But I tend to go towards a lot of the lighter schemes, like the lighter colors instead of going darker, a little more warm palette. Except for I find sometimes I'm painting a lot of brown, but just because of like all the leather on some of these characters.
Yeah. I think when I first started painting, the thing that I wanted to do was stick as close to the studio as possible, and so I would Google, for an image, and I would have it on my phone next to my model while I was painting and things like that. But there were a couple models where I just wanted to experiment and totally just stepped out of like what I thought they wanted to be, like what I thought they should be. I wanted it differently, and so my Greylord Fordseer, for example, I wanted him to have this gorgeous like blue-violet cape, and so that's what I gave him, and I thought it was one of the best parts of the model.
That's pretty cool. I haven't seen that. Well, now I will get to.
Now, you might get to. Someone has it. But
it's sitting in a vat of green stuff right now, or simple green right now.
Oh no, that'd be so tragic. That'd be so tragic. But I've done. But I actually, on the experimenting thing, I've liked experimenting with models before. Like, so I had two mercenaries that I was kind of playing around with. One of them was the guy with the gun that shoots 14, and it's
Alton Ashley.
Kel Baylock.
Yeah.
So when I painted Kel Baylock, the thing I was experimenting with, and this puts me ahead of GW, by the way, because contrast paints weren't out yet. I did his entire model with washes, except for I did paint brown on the whole of the gun. And so, the stock, that's the word I'm looking for. And then I did paint gun metal on for the metal. But everything else was done completely in washes, and I thought it turned out really great. It's one of my most favorite models I've ever painted, and I tried doing the same thing with Ayana and Holt as well. But that's more of like technique and not really scheme. So I'm totally getting off topic. But
you're just going to a different part of the topic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
it's something we're going to get to anyway. Is different techniques and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. That could be one of the things too when you're thinking about your scheme is how much time do you have to paint it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Is if you're trying to go for a quick deal, then maybe you're gonna want to choose simpler colors. I know I usually I'm gonna speed paint this. I'm gonna choose 4 colors and just go with it. And the next thing I know, when I'm done, it's like 8, 9, 10 colors later.
10 colors.
I'm like, oh wow, that didn't work out how I thought it was going to. But
I frequently do that when a bunch of my Death Guard stuff that I have painted is on display in the case at work, and I talk about it a lot because it's right next to the register. So. I tell people, they're like, oh man, these things look really good. And I'm like, oh thanks. Like, it's actually, they're like, man, I wish I could paint. And I'm like, honestly, like,
you can.
You can. I was like, I've been doing a very quick and dirty technique that's very effective for like tabletop distance. And frequently I'm like, oh, that's only like 5 colors. And I'm like, wait, no, it's 9. It's 9. There's 9 different colors there. Never mind. There's 9 different colors there. But it's not that complex.
You could do that away with 5.
I probably could have. The nitty gritty is like the small accent colors you do for odds and end things, because it's like
Yeah.
it's really only like probably about 4 colors, which is it's like the green for the armor, the red for the cloth, the metallics for the weapons, and like any of the like some of the models have like chainmail, and then it's the there's 2 other colors. There's purple if there's any like if there's any like of the tentacle looking growths coming out from underneath the armor, like bursting out of the armor. Use a color for that, and then for any of the spikes that come out, I do a different color because it's more like a hardened bone rather than something that's still like organic.
Yeah.
I do a different color for that. So there's really only 5 base colors, but then there's some other like weird accents of if there's any like boils or if there's any like leaking ooze or anything like that, I use a different color for that.
Yeah.
Or if there's like a radical on a helmet or something, I'll use a different like color for that so that it pops a little bit differently. But and then I just wash the whole thing in Agrax Earthshade, so then it makes it look so much better.
So yeah, both of you guys said kind of the same thing, just in kind of different ways, and that's looking at similar parts of your models, especially if you're doing like kind of one army, and so for example, I think I have 2 Scythians, 2 Carnivians, 2 Ravagors, and I'm going to paint their flesh different colors, but like the carapace is all going to be the same color, for all of them, and and the spikes that come out of their back and things like that. And so that's how you'll be able to tell them apart when you're playing me on the table, but they'll still look kind of uniform.
How are you going to decide which colors you're doing for the flesh?
So honestly, when I look at the Legion war beasts, all I see are bright, fun colors. And so I'm thinking like, it's silly, but pink and purple and a green and a blue and a red and, I just want it to be fun. And I want them all to kind of stand out. I'm kind of jealous of some of the Grimkin painters in our area because they get these gorgeous models. I think the Grimkin army is designed for hobbyists. And so many of them are coming up with some really fun paint schemes and, 3 different clockatrices that are all different, but they still look uniform and things like that. So
well, they're also just a very unique faction too, because they're some of the most recent models for 1, and for 2, just the way that they are created, because they're fairy tale horrors.
Yeah. Whereas
the Legion War Beasts a lot of those are older designs. They might be a little bit pigeonholed, especially the Ravagor, Carnivore, Carnivian, and Scythian chassis are all, I feel like, a little bit pigeonholed in the way that their design is.
It's a pretty simple.
From the beginning.
The body pose is the same. The only difference is their main arms.
And their head, those ones are supposed to be, they're dragon spawn. So, like, the thought of those is that they're created on a mass quantity. Kind of like the similar thing with Circle, with the Pureblood, the Stalker, and the Feral all have very similar bodies. Like, their arms are a little bit different, and some of them are a little bit like... The difference between the Feral and a Pureblood is very small if you don't do different color schemes, because unless you know exactly what you're looking for the differences, they look almost exactly the same. Because they're not holding any weapons, but the Feral has armor plates like on the back of its hands and on its forearms, where the Pureblood doesn't, but it has armor plating like along the back of its neck. And it's very, very different, and that's one of those things that I think like the color scheme you can use to differentiate what the different models look like.
So you could do something kind of opposite of that too, like my Cephalix. I have like 1 million drudges, right? And each unit of the drudges, their skin is all the same. The only difference is like their loincloth. And so there's a unit with green loincloth and a unit with red loincloth and a unit with purple loincloth.
And do that a lot sometimes, especially with infantry spam lists.
And that helps separate all my drudges as I throw 60 or 70 at you.
That's what I did something similar with my Gators. It's kind of made the back spine a little bit different, where like most of them were green, except for one unit, which I guess is the other way. Like I said, when you're thinking about this, is you kind of look at the lore. You kind of just looked at, hey, what would be fun to put on this? Or like some might have been like, okay, I want to do like, these guys are all going to be like a lava theme. Well, that kind of starts dictating towards where my colors are going to be and
Right.
where I'm going. So I have like one unit of gators that are like dredging through lava. Like that's their environment, so that's kind of how they've adapted to it, or something like that. Or like a lot of my troll bloods, when I've been doing the Northkin lists, is doing that more of a paley blue and trying to think, okay, they're probably generally in the winter or something like that, or snowy. So how do I adapt them to that environment? And now I'm going to choose a scheme that closely resembles that, for example.
That's a really cool idea, adding like a story element to what you're painting. I wonder, have you guys ever, warlocks and certain war beasts, character war beasts are bonded, and same thing with some warcasters and their warjacks.
Yeah.
Have you ever done anything to make that bond look to be represented on the table in the way that you paint your models?
I have not, actually.
That's a good idea, though.
That is a really good idea to do. No, I haven't done that. A lot of my stuff is just in a uniform color scheme, and my circle is actually an alternate color scheme compared to what the studio scheme is. Instead of being a lot of like greens and brass and brighter like spring colors, mine are actually very darker colors. It's the robes are all black. The armor is done in blue with a lighter blue highlighting, so it's a much colder scheme. And I came across it years ago. I was painting a unit of skinwalkers, and I hadn't done very much painting. This is actually the beginning of my painting. My painting life is I was hanging out with myself. It was myself, my buddy Josh, one other person, and James Slager, who's not part of the community as much anymore. And we were sitting around trying to paint models for the very first I-5. And I was playing on a team, and I think I was playing on James's team, and I was on a different Portland team. But we wanted everyone to have fully painted lists, and my stuff wasn't painted. So, the thing that I was sitting there and I had like analysis paralysis. I was like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what color to do, or anything. And James was like, just grab a color and start putting it on the model. Just go. Just grab a color and go.
That's good advice.
Whatever you think would look cool, like just go, like look at a certain part of the model and just grab a color and start painting. And I was like, okay, well, I'm painting a skinwalker, which are like half wolf dudes. I've always really liked gray wolves, so let's put gray. Let's do gray fur. And so I did gray fur, blue armor for something different, black for the cloaks. I do a white trim for the fur that's on the cloaks, and then the metallics are generally, just a tarnished silver, which I have a different technique to make it look tarnished. And then eventually, once we got done with that, I think we did a wash in Agrax, and then we did dry brushing. And I just took a lighter blue. I use underbelly blue as my dry brush highlight, or my dry brusher, over top of the gray fur, and then also over top of the armor. So I get a lighter blue over top of the blue armor, and then the gray and the fur, and it adds a lot of layers to the fur too.
Nice.
And then another lighter dry brush, sometimes with Menthol White highlight, to give a brighter contrast, so a little bit more depth to the fur too.
I like that.
But that was, basically how I started. And the other stuff that I did, I painted in other random assortments, a random smattering of some different color schemes, and I'm working on getting everything uniform in all of my circle army.
Yeah.
And the majority of it is already painted. The majority of it's already done in the color scheme. My blood trackers, I need to go back and repaint. I've actually, I purchased a second Kruger 2 so that I could paint him in my color scheme instead of the regular color scheme that I did before, because I didn't want to strip the model, because I felt like it looked good with like greens and yellows and stuff like that instead. I didn't want to strip the model. And then I do some pretty standard colors for like the leathers and stuff like that for like belts and things.
That's a good notion right there. Like paying attention to how the rest of the army is going to look and things. One of the things that we can do too to make our armies look uniform is we can base them all the same.
Yeah.
So I have a Malifaux crew that I bought these base inserts from Death Ray Designs, and I think they're really great, and they fit right in the middle of the base. And so the entire crew is going to be mounted on that insert,
Yeah.
and it's going to be painted the same, and that's how you know that they're together.
A bunch of my circle stuff had resin bases that had been made by Sammy and Coleman in the community, and then when I ran out of those, I had to start basing my own stuff with other things, and I just used like simple gravel and tufts.
Yeah.
So about half of my army, more than half of my army at this point is based that way, and then a handful of other stuff is based on those other things. But
Yeah. And in War Machine, the other thing that I do is I paint the arcs the same.
Yes.
And so, and that's really interesting when you like, because when you get lots and you get used models from other players, you know, their arcs or their bases are different, and so at least if the arc is the same, at first glance it looks like it all belongs to the same army.
Yeah, funny story about that is that I paint mine just black and white, so the back of the arc is white, and then the front of the arc is just black. And Harry actually does the opposite. He does a black back and a white front. And it's really funny when we play against each other because he constantly thinks that my stuff is turned around backwards because he's used to looking at his own stuff. He's like, so I'm in their back arc, right? And I'm like, no, you're in the front arc, Harry. I do black on the front of my base. He's like, oh, that's right. I keep forgetting because I keep looking at my stuff, and it looks... I know I'm looking at the back of my models, and I think I'm looking at the back of your models by looking at the bases.
That's really funny. That's really funny.
That's kind of funny. Yeah, I know a lot of people do their arcs in different ways. Like, I usually try to keep mine, like as I go uniform as well, but like, oh, you know, Signar, Trollbloods, they're kind of like a blue, or I go to picture like Khador, Scorn, Red, like, again, kind of going back to that main thing, and the arc can look different. Like I said, you free form it, and you kind of go after yours, and like, oh, hey, this is how I kind of, like, just start painting, right?
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to just do, just pick a color and go.
Yeah.
I'm very kind of analytical, like, I got my color wheel, you know, I even have it here for some reference. But, like, you know, it's like I always kind of sit that out because then I might think of a color like, okay, they're going to be a green skin, or what's their primarily, you know, they're primarily a blue armor. Okay, what's going to look good with blue, right? You know, and
Well, Dan, put some tea to that. You have your color wheel in front of you.
I do.
What colors go well together that look appealing to you?
Well, yeah, so that's kind of one of those things is learning early on too, like what colors really go with what. All color theory can go into it, and there's many people who talk much more educational.
There are people who know a lot about this.
I'm going to use that as a technique.
Yes.
But like, you know, like I said, like blue, right? If you wanted to go really opposite of that, make it pop, would be like an orange.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something I wouldn't even think about, like, you know, putting on a bit of orange there, but maybe as like a highlight or something would pop it. You know, I tend to split mine a little bit more to either what they call the triad or the split complementary, which you get your main color and then a couple extras. Like the blue would go good with, like, say, red and yellow, or blue could go good with like a yellow orange and a reddish orange. Those sort of things. And I started picking those up, and like you just kind of look at that and go, oh wait, you know, I know green and red play well off of each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That triad idea, that's a new idea for me.
Yeah.
Where did you learn from that, or where did you pick that up on?
Well, one, when I'm trying to learn some of it, you know, like I said, guys out there that speak about it, and then also just on the color wheel itself, it gives a nice layout. You even got the tetrad, which is like a 4-color scheme and everything like that. So it's like literally on my color wheel that just pretty much tells me these will look good together naturally of just how the eye goes.
Yeah.
Even though I may not think about it, like the blue and the yellow may not come to mind right away, but then, like I said, you start thinking about it, and you can look around and be like, oh, there's other, you know, there's companies and characters and teams that use blue and yellow or something like that.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
blue and gold.
yeah, exactly, a gold, which is really close to that, and so it really like, oh, okay. So obviously these companies have paid a lot of money and marketing and everything like that to get their colors for a reason.
Someone got paid a lot of money to tell them that these colors look good.
Exactly. to look at their color wheel that I got for $2 and say, yes, that'll be 20
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
See, I get overwhelmed by the color choice because, you know, when you go to the store and, you know, Citadel has their display,
Yes.
Privateer Press has their display, you know, Vallejo's out there and they have their display, and there's so many varieties of the colors. And when I'm painting GW models, it's kind of easy because a lot of times they'll name their color based on the army it kind of goes with.
Yeah,
Like
Nurgle Rot
or corn red,
Yeah.
you know. I know that this is going to go on my corn models just fine, you know. But when you start, but looking at a color wheel and looking at something that that's a little more theory based, can help you make a wiser decision. And even if you're mixing and matching, paint companies, you can still make something that looks good, right?
Yeah.
So
and sometimes I'll grab a color that I think looks really nice and then find an excuse to put it or use it on a model. Like Sanguine Base was actually an example of that recently.
Is that the new color?
No, it's not the new one. It's it's one of the ones by Privateer Press. Scott let me borrow it for a piece that I was doing. Oh, I know. I remember what it was. It was for a commission job that I was doing. I needed some of their darker reds for a roguish type character that I was doing. And I used a Sanguine Base and coal black and I think a darker blue or something like that. And then I used a violet wash over top of it, and it looked really nice. And I eventually picked up a pot for myself once it came back in stock. And then I actually used that a lot for for Sky Sentinel. It's one of the primary red colors is Sanguine Base, Car Red Base, and then like Coal Black and just like a dark gray. And then I think I even splashed a little bit of Gravedigger Denim. It's either Gravedigger Denim or Meridius Blue. So like also kind of a grayish blue color, but it's still opposite. So it's used as an accent in a couple of spots to be a big contrast.
Yeah. That's a really good idea what you just said, though. Sometimes you pick your color scheme on a color that you just love.
Yeah.
Like I really like this color and I want to use it, and so I'm gonna use it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And
no, absolutely not.
One of the other things too that you can, this is kind of painting related, but also just miniatures games in general. If you're looking at getting into a miniatures game and you're not sure what you want to play, think about the way that the models look, and think about what you want to paint, or what you would have fun painting, or what you would have fun looking at.
Yeah.
And then that can also kind of give you a direction for getting into, or give you some inspiration for a color scheme or something like that. You're like, man, I don't know about these Mouth guys, but they would look super cool with like this certain color scheme. I want to get into them and then learn the game, or something else.
I actually have gotten out of armies because I did not want to paint them. So
is that why you offloaded Jakador?
No, my Seraphon army, and I initially I thought lizards riding dinosaurs cool.
Yes.
Then I was like,
cool.
No, I don't want to paint that. Done.
That's one.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say with those that could be one of those armies I could see where you almost kind of start getting pigeonholed into a paint scheme because you're like, oh, these lizard dudes are gonna be like green, and then they're gonna have a bunch of brown on them, so I'm just gonna be painting green and brown all day long.
Yeah. But I think that's also why we play multiple armies and multiple games.
Yeah.
Because that way we can our hobby desk can always be changing with fresh projects.
Yeah.
But
and every now and then I'll grab a piece that I want to try something different with. So an example was I did the Scar Bust by Privateer Press, and I wanted to do it. I already had some ideas of what I wanted to do for the color scheme because I had painted a Scar 3 Admiral of the Black Fleet, I think is the name of the model. I had done that as a commission, and the person wanted it in very like nautical color scheme. So that was a lot of fun, actually. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, but it was a lot of bootstrap leather for the wood, coal black for a lot of the metal plating on the outside, and then I used molten bronze for a lot of the metals and stuff like that, and it looked very nice. And so I replicated something similar to that on the bust that I ended up doing, where I used coal black for the jacket, and then some varying colors for like the different armors and things like that. But one of the things that I did differently was with the model's hair, and I had played around with this idea of dry brushing for blending. or dry brushing for layering to get different layers instead of using washes. So I primed the model black. I did a heavy dry brush of copper red base over top of the black primer so that it had a red tint to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I dry brushed bootstrap leather over top of that in a lighter way. And then I actually did an even lighter dry brush of mediocre orange just over the very edges to get a very sharp contrast, like where the light is hitting, and it makes a very rich depth of hair coloration with very little effort.
Yeah, that's really good because no one's hair is actually the same color all the way through.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
There's layers to it, and I got to do it as well without using a bunch of washes or without going through and hand doing a lot of like highlights. And it was it's a quick and easy way to make it look good from tabletop distance, and that's a lot of what my painting technique is like it's quick, it's dirty, and it looks good on the table.
So that leads me to, we have two more questions or two more kind of subtopics to really kind of touch on. And so before we get to the very last one, what you just said leads us to one of those that we're missing. And are there any shortcuts or are there any tips that you do personally to try to get it on the table faster, painted?
Lots.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess I'll just finish expanding. My entire paint scheme is kind of like that. The way that I paint is primer, get my base colors down. So like the main parts that I want, like armor, leather, or cloth, different accents, metallics, and then I wash the model usually in Agrax because it's a brown. It gets into recesses nicely. It still adds the shadow and definition, but then it also kind of dirty stuff up so it looks weathered and used and not shiny and new. And then I'll do highlighting after that, usually just with some simple dry brushing. But one of the techniques that I use a lot, actually use all the time on metallics, is dry brushing the metallic over top of the black. So that it doesn't get, because a weapon, like especially if you think about it from the process of like some of these guys have probably been out on the battlefield for a long time. It's not like there are people that are constantly like buffing their weapons or like the boilers on the warjacks and stuff like that. They're gonna be dirty. They're gonna be used. And so when you dry brush the metallic over top of a black primer, or just over top of black, if you prime white and you just paint the section black, and then if you just dry brush over top of it, you get sparse coverage. And that creates a worn and weathered look. And then if you throw a brown wash over top of it, it makes it look even more dirty. And I use that technique all the time. It's super simple, it's really fast, and it's extremely effective. And I do it on all of my metallics.
That's pretty great.
It looks great.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And one of the, like a similar technique I've been doing with my Death Guard is I've been taking the same approach to the green armor. Like, they're Nurgle. They don't care if they look pretty. Like, they're dirty, they're gross. So I actually, the green for the armor is the first color that I always do after priming, and I will do it in a similar fashion, is I will paint it sparsely, or will paint it in a way where, like, I have less paint occasionally in the bristles or more paint occasionally, so that there is a differentiation in paint coverage over top of the model. So sometimes the paint looks thinner and there's a little more black, and sometimes it's a little heavier. And then when you add the brown wash over top of it, it just makes it look really dirty. And you can see it in some of the vehicles that I did, like the Mythic Blight Hullers and the Fetid Blight Drones. If you look at them when they're at the store, they are not evenly coated because that's not the way that I wanted them to be. They're gross, they're dirty, they don't care what they look like.
Yeah. See, I go even one step further with my Nurgle. For a shortcut, I actually buy the colored primers from Army Painter.
Yeah.
And so there is a color that is is like a greenish looking thing, and it's kind of light.
Yeah.
And so I'll start there, and so I already have my base color down essentially, and then I'll highlight some of the fleshy wound stuff.
Yeah.
I'll put base on that because that's going to be a different color, obviously. Pinks and reds and whatnot, and purples as you indicated earlier. And then I'll do several layers of wash and dry brush to get the look that I want. And like I did a set of Nurglings like instantly. I realized I saw them on the table last week, and I realized I forgot to paint the horns. But that's I could.
How dare you?
I know, but I could do that. But it looked really good, and it all started with priming in the color that I knew it was going to be, and then I just used washers and dry brush to get the depth.
I wish I would have done that for the 30 Poxwalkers that I had to paint.
Oh yeah.
They're currently primed black.
Ooh.
I wish I would have thought about doing that and primed them like a dirty flesh color or something. But I guess with the technique, it's probably not going to take me that long to do.
Yeah.
But
I've completely sworn off priming in black because I want brighter models on the table, personally, and also I don't have enough light in my house to see, and if it's primed in black, there are details that I miss. And so, but if I prime it in a lighter color, like a white or this like ugly green that I mentioned, or even a bone color, I really like a bone color, then I can see more of the model.
So that's the reason why I do prime in black, is because if I do miss something, it blends in more easily with the darker color scheme. Whereas with white, if you miss a tiny little corner and you've painted everything else around it, that little white spot sticks out like a sore thumb. And sometimes it's really difficult to get to if you're just like, I need to put just the tiniest little drop of paint to cover that stupid thing up, but I can't reach it because this part of the arm is in the way. And that's the reason why I stopped painting white, is I got tired of seeing like little random spots of it where
that's fair. That's actually
deep recesses.
That's a good counterpoint. That's fair.
I've kind of done both.
Go neutral, prime gray.
Yeah, actually, recently a lot of my stuff's been being primed gray. But I've done a lot of that where you use a certain color, and like that's easy, especially for the Signar, ultramarine blue or whatever. And then sometimes I've done it too, where I just like quickly paint it, and then like you look at it and go, it's not a great opaque coat, but man, it kind of looks decently worn. Yeah. I can just let that go. Yeah. And then recently with the whole contrast paint enigma, like you mentioned earlier, I've actually been playing around with kind of making an own that's not quite a wash, but in between. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's going back to priming some stuff white is for that reason, is to be able to just lay that quick layer on there.
Yeah, yeah.
Fun fact, sometimes when I get lazy, I don't paint over the primer. I did that with Defender X for the spots in between like the hips and the legs for that like upper thigh or the upper arm. I didn't paint those. I just left them gray primer. There you go.
Oh. But you do like wash over it and stuff.
Nope.
No, you didn't even do that.
No, I didn't wash any of my Monpox stuff actually, that's not true. No, that is true. I haven't washed any of my Monpox stuff. It still looks good. But yeah, I just did that because I was like, well, I really want this part to be gray, and I'm not going to paint gray over top of gray because I'm lazy. And it looks fine. Nobody else is going to know unless I say something. Now everyone knows my secret.
It's out there now. Or at least it will be once I post this.
To the couple of people in our community that listen to it, that can give me a hard time about it.
Yeah, you'll get poked.
Yeah.
So I guess we touched on a lot of different things about choosing a paint scheme. The last question is sort of maybe it can be framed in an ethical way or whatever, or an IP sort of. But what happens when you're at the store and you look over at the table next to you and someone has this amazingly painted army and you're like, I want to copy that scheme right there. What do you guys do with those thoughts?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, recently actually one of the locals posted a picture of his Gogadra, and I was like, darn, I was thinking about doing a similar paint scheme. Granted, that's not really taking it, and I probably still could, and it'll be fine. But it's just kind of that thing of like, oh wow, someone's already done that. Do I want to do that, or do I change?
Yeah.
That's a real question. I guess still just kind of go with what you love, and you find the inspiration, and copying's the highest form of flattery, right? They say.
Yeah. I think so.
There's definitely been times when I've seen something I wanted to replicate, and then realized that I maybe don't have the skills to do so. There was someone that posted a picture of a volcanic-themed Armadax that had, basically it was, very dark, dark black for the scales and things like that, but, the ridges along the back were basically, there was lava growing or glowing out from underneath it. It looked fantastic. I would really like to do something like that, but I don't think I have the patience or the skill to do it currently. So I'll just try and find something else.
Yeah.
There's definitely been times where like I've seen other paint jobs that were really pretty, very well done, that have maybe inspired me to do certain things like that. But usually it just kind of inspires me to try to step up my own game, to make my
Yeah.
own paint scheme look different and unique and well done, so that somebody else is maybe inspired by it to improve themselves as well,
Yeah.
and maybe not necessarily copy somebody else.
I think that's a good word right there.
Yeah.
I think when you see something that you like, and I mean, that's ultimately in the end, it's your army, and you're going to put it on the table, and you get to look at yours all the time,
Yep.
and you're the one working on it. I think having something to give you inspiration is fair, and it depends on your relationship with the other person, right? If you see them a lot, maybe have a chat with them, but like, but if it's someone you don't see very often, and you know they're just someone in
If it's like
yeah,
you're passing by a con or something like that.
yeah, then absolutely go ham. It's your army. Get paint on it.
Muppet Army, here I come.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, so what are you guys working on? What's on your hobby desk today or this week?
Right, I got a few things going. I got too many things going on. That's my problem. But I've got the Monpac Martial Menace all primed up. I need to actually get some practice with my airbrush so I can actually paint that because I want to practice first. I got some Malifaux Gremlins Bayou that I'm building. I'm still working on building up my Infinity. Then start getting those guys all painted. Actually just finished up a Ma Tucket crew box for Malifaux. Which was again kind of that, okay, paint scheme real quick. I just grabbed a couple colors. I was like, there's a lot of browns. They're green skin. What else can I go with? And I just went at it, like, had a rough idea, checked the color real quick.
Back at your regular paint scheme.
Exactly.
This whole episode, I've heard you complain about
Pretty
painting
much.
green and brown. And you are talking about painting more green and brown.
That's what I do. I mean,
I'm gonna get you green and brown for your birthday.
Yeah, right?
You know, my others are like, green and blue or blue and yellow. But, so I got that done, and then those ones I did pretty quick, and then I got a winter troll done with, like, that experiment of inks and a medium, and
Nice.
painting that guy up.
Nice.
Well, I just recently started and basically finished my Mortarion that I was painting.
Heyo.
It was done over the course of a couple of nights. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I need to do a little bit more painting on the base and then get some. I have some technical paint, or one of the technical paints from GW that dries so it looks like wet mud. That I'm going to put down around the base so it looks like it's in like this very dank and dirty like cave, pretty much. But he's basically done. I put the wash on him last night. The other day. Wash on him. Hit the dry brush the highlights for like the wood shaft of his scythe that he's carrying and some other things. So he's pretty much done. As far as other things that I'm working on, I've got the Harbinger shard for Monster Apocalypse that I need to paint for the store because I've been staring at it for too long. I really should get back to work on painting my circle stuff. I've just been avoiding it because I painted a bunch of some Tharn things, and I just keep looking at all of the Tharn stuff that I have to keep painting, and I'm tired of doing that paint scheme right now. And that's the majority of kind of what I have left. I don't have any commission stuff that I'm working on currently. My client that I did the Burna Boys and the Noise Marine for was very happy with them. He picked them up over this weekend. He was very happy with how they turned out. That was
Nice.
That was another actually interesting thing, is trying to figure out. He told me he wanted them to be painted like death skulls, and so then I had to go and do some research about what that color scheme looked like, and then kind of put a little twist on it with what I had available or what colors I thought would work well. But green skins and blue face paint basically, and
Okay.
then some white accents. Those ones turned out pretty good.
Nice. I picked up an Archangel, and there were some broken pieces on it, and so I did some repair on that and sculpted some small parts of it in green stuff, and so that is currently drying. And then when it's dry, I'll probably prime it and and start to put some paint on it.
How's your Desert Hydra coming?
My Desert Hydra is sad because it's looking at the Archangel and going, being super jealous because you're like, oh, you have a new toy. But you're right. I probably should finish the Desert Hydra.
Especially like, if you're halfway there, just knock out the rest of it.
Yeah, that's a good call. And I'm currently painting another Carnivean, so maybe I should stop that and finish the Desert Hydra. I've got some Warriors of Chaos that need some repair and some paint, and so I'm kind of looking at those. And then I got at the event in Salem, I won $10 in store credit, and so I picked up the Statue of Liberty and
Sweet.
promptly broke her at the wrist.
At the wrist.
Yep. And so I didn't even, on my way up to the register, for some weird reason, I dropped the box, and it just broke right there.
Yeah.
And it was so.
Was it broke? Did you look to see if it was broken beforehand?
It was not broken.
Okay.
And so
we had that problem.
Yeah.
We got 4 of them in, and 2 of them. I mean, they came in bubble wrap, but 2 of them were broken at the wrist already. It's a very, very weak contact point, but
yeah.
with
So
a small Dremel and a pin, you should be able to get it.
I put some good paint. I'm using Gorilla Glue, which I'm really confident in, and so I did not do any drilling.
Okay.
And so we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to put some primer on that, some paint on that. I'm going to paint that one with contrast paint, so I should do it really quickly.
Okay.
I should have that done this week. So, but that'll be my first painted Monpok model. But
All right.
But yeah, those are
Did
things.
you get your other stuff assembled? Your other Monpok stuff?
No,
Get it assembled. Come on.
I'm okay.
You were lamenting about not
I know.
having your own Monpok stuff assembled.
I know. Well, now I got 2 games in
That's
this
a good
week, so
point.
now I'm
Yeah.
inspired to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ozzy and I had a really good hobby day yesterday, and so he was working on some. He built 2 feculent gnarl moths, and then he also built the Fire Slayer version of Endless Spells. They actually don't have Endless Spells. They have something else, and I can't remember what they're called. But they had it's essentially the same idea for Age of Sigmar. So he's really proud of himself, and wants to put them on the table now. So, but. Okay, well, we have some events coming up we just want to highlight real quick. We have the Oblivion Masters League. It actually starts August 7th. Are you guys going to participate in that?
I'm already signed up.
Nice.
I was the first one signed up.
Nice.
If you guys are not signed up, I think we're only at about 10, and Ben is shouting for more people. So
I'm going to. But
Yeah, I'm going to as well. And
Is Ozzy?
the question is Oz. Last time I think he participated.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask him. I'm going to give him the choice. So he'll probably say yes, because that's what he does. But I just haven't asked him, which is why I haven't personally signed up yet, because I usually sign us both up at the same time.
I gotta figure out what I'm gonna play.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be Circle because I think I'm actually gonna not get into Infernals.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's too much other stuff that I want to buy.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I was looking at the Oblivion theme forces, and specifically I was looking at the requisition points. And there are some themes in Scorn that I don't have the models to fulfill the requisition, some of those requisition options. I actually have more Legion than I do Scorn.
Yeah.
And so I'm probably going to play Legion for the Masters.
do it.
Which is weird. I've never really built, so anyway, I feel like I'm going back on a promise I made myself in January when I said, this is the year of Scorn.
This is your score.
And then Oblivion drops. And
Yeah. I keep building lists, and then I also keep, oh shoot, that reminds me now, like, I'm not going to be able to put the Primal Archon in any of my lists. I made some fun lists with like 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
That model looks cool.
Well,
I made a really interesting, I think, Devourer's Host list with Chromac 1, 3 heavies, and 2 Primal Archons
nice.
that I want to play, and it's not out until like
October,
October,
yeah.
August or
Well,
October.
I'm probably going to run
No.
Archangel on like every list.
I think it's September.
It's the Archangel. No. We also have the NorCal Classic coming up, August 9th and 11th. I'm doing too much traveling this summer. There's no way I'm going down there. So, and especially with the changes with Oblivion, I just don't feel prepared to do something that big.
I think it would have needed to be registered by now. At this
Oh,
point.
definitely, for sure. But I just wanted to talk about it because I wanted, I love that stuff. We also have a steamroller on August 31st at Mox and Bellevue, and Oz and I are going to that. So I've already registered.
Is that a Saturday?
And it's a Saturday, yeah. So we're probably gonna drive up Friday, stay the night with my grandma, and then play the 3 rounds. They're guaranteed 3 rounds, and so that means I can be home at a reasonable time on Saturday night, which is good because I work on Sunday. So the next day, so it'll be good. So
James's monthly steamroller is happening next Saturday.
on the 4th. Yeah. I'm gonna be, or it's 5th.
No.
6th?
No, it's the.
Oh, it's a Saturday.
It's this coming Sunday, the 3rd.
Sunday the 3rd. Okay.
Should be the 3rd.
It's okay. We don't know when it is. It's this weekend.
It's first or second weekend of the.
Nope, sorry, Sunday the 4th.
Sunday the 4th.
That's why I was confused, because
Yeah.
Nick and Sadie come back on the 3rd.
Yeah. I'm going to be in San Francisco, so I won't be able to play in it. But
Rude.
I know. I've been traveling a lot this summer.
Yeah.
So it's been really good for the family and for me. But we're going to wrap up here. I wanted to give a shout out real quick to Gadzooks Gaming. They're an online retailer, and they specialize in gaming supplies and terrain, as well as they can do 3D printing. They can actually do special orders on 3D prints. So I know some of our guys in the community want something 3D printed, and some local guys can do it, but may or may not want to, kind of thing. But here's an option for you. If you're willing to pay for it, you can go to Gadzooks Gaming for that. I'm just shouting them out real quick because I actually made a pre-order with them a long time ago for some product that's coming out, and they chose to break up the order into 2 different shipments, which means I got the stuff that was available when it became available, and the stuff that's being held back, they're going to send it later. And in addition to that, they actually threw in a free piece of terrain. And so I've got this gorgeous looking 3D printed tree stump, and it's like vertically standing. It'll fit in almost any fantasy kind of setting. And we play a lot of fantasy games, so Frostgrave, Age of Sigmar, that kind of thing. And so I just want to shout them out real quick, just because I got excellent customer service. I don't get paid for that shout out, but I just want to let people know about them. So that's all really. And then we also want to do thank you over here, right?
Yeah, for TysonFigurePainters.com. Had an issue with some smoke trails for Crucible Guard because it's one more army I need. And
yeah.
Army you already have.
Right. Well, I have it. I haven't really played it though. Maybe I should play that in Masters. But anyway,
Hey, that's a good idea.
So some of the smoke trails and the mold lines weren't that great, or it seemed like there was a mold issue. There was holes in them and so forth. So I took some pictures, sent it to him. Within a day or two, he responded back like, "Hey, yeah, it looks like a bad one. Give me your address. I'll send you a new set. No real hard questions or anything like that. And I ended up buying some stuff from him anyway, and he shipped them all together.
That's great.
But
yeah, Tyson at Figure Painters.
Yeah,
that's really great. Hey, thanks for listening to our show today. We love to hear more from our listeners, so feel free to give us a message on our Discord channel, or you can email us at spellstormminiatures@gmail.com. If you want to support us, you can do that by telling your friends about us. You can also like us on Facebook, and you can leave a positive review on iTunes. And we just want to inspire you to play more games, so go out and roll some dice.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba
Bye.